What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. The Sony live service struggles continue, this time with a shutdown that's been announced for a game that's actually run almost the entirety of the PlayStation 5 generation, almost 5.5 years now, but it just kind of continues to show some of the struggles that Sony has had ever since announcing their big plunge into live service games, and we'll take a look at that here today. Also, we are to be talking about more games that are leaking out ahead of next week's presentations, this for a wide range of systems, the Xbox, PlayStation, and the Switch 2. And then we have 007 First Light, which is out today. Reviews, though, did go live yesterday, and some are even talking once again about another Game of the Year contender here, but we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Sony and their Days of Play sale. They have many different events happening around this, which we'll talk briefly about the PlayStation Plus essential games that were revealed later in the show. But they do have some things that are on sale, and we can see it here. Now, they have this kind of lined up in a bullet point fashion, but it does start today, the 27th. It'll run until June 10th, and you're going to notice immediately there is no PlayStation 5 console that's on sale. Shocking. I know, I mean, it's just been going up and up in price, and it's, I guess, not too surprising that they're not knocking any money off of it. But the PSVR 2, $100 off? Okay. Pulse Explorer wireless earbuds, those are $50 off. $40 off the Pulse Elite wireless headset. $30 off DualSense Edge wireless controller. $30 off the Access controller. Up to $20 off DualSense wireless controller. So I'm sure many people out there who might be looking for a second controller, this is probably a good time to do that with that discount. And they also have various discounts on PS5 games. They do name Ghost of Yotei, Helldivers 2, Death Stranding 2, and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. However, there should be a number of games going up for sale that I'll keep an eye out to see if there's anything really big that goes up here, and what'll probably be like hundreds of games that are discounted. But I don't know, Days of Play this year is just kind of and a lot of that does have to do with them shying away maybe from taking a swing at the discount on a PlayStation 5 console, you know, in year 6. Also, it looks like Maverick Games is setting up a reveal for next week. This right now we can see it's a live stream that they have over on their YouTube channel, and they have a car with a countdown timer that's currently right around 6 days or so, and that would line up then with next week with the run of different events that we'll see, whether it's Summer Game Fest or PlayStation State of Play or, of course, Xbox's event. Now, Maverick Games is interesting because they are made up of like the former director for Forza Horizon at Playground Games than many of the developers that moved over. But what happened was a few months ago, I remember Amazon like pulled out support as I think one of their publisher here. So I don't know if they found another publisher or they're just going to try to go it alone here. But we're basically expecting, I mean, you see the car there and you hear about I guess the previous history for the developers, probably an open world racing game. Like, how close is it going to be to something like a Forza Horizon? That remains to be seen. Or are they going to go the direction of, we'll have some licenses or none at all, and it'll be kind of like made up cars? I don't know. So again, a lot of questions there, but seems like we'll find out more about this project next week, so stay tuned. Oh, and in some very random news, Resident Evil Requiem now has a demo, which is funny because I was hoping for a demo on the lead up to release, as whenever they had an event for Capcom, we're like, oh, here comes the Resident Evil Requiem demo, and it never happened until, well, now months later. And like over on Komatsu, we can see they do say a demo for Requiem is now available: PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Switch 2, and PC through Steam and Epic Game Store. Now, it seems like this demo is just kind of the early stages of the game. I thought it was kind of strange. Your save data does not carry over. I know we see Square Enix do that a lot, and it kind of makes sense because it's sort of that situation of, hey, do you want to keep going? You buy the game. I guess the one nice thing is you can try it out on a platform and just kind of see how it runs. I mean, the Switch 2, I'm sure there's just curiosity there in general, so you can download the demo. But obviously on something like PC, where you just want to see how maybe your video card or your CPU, just your configuration holds up, especially if it's more of a budget system. So there you go. The demo is now live and you can check it out. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony and a shutdown that was just kind of randomly announced yesterday for a live service game that kicked off the PlayStation 5 generation, and that's Destruction All-Star. So Radic from the podcast actually pinged me on this and was like, hey, Destruction All-Star is going away, and he put out a message on Twitter X here, and I was looking at it and said, okay, that's very random, but I wonder how many people actually care that Destruction All-Stars is necessarily going away, because I feel like many people forgot about the thing. And then later on in the day, I got an email from Sony, and it seems like everyone else did, because I saw people posting about it online, and even like The Verge just kind of did a screen grab of it here, where they say single player modes will remain accessible to existing users until Wednesday, November 25th, when all server support for Destruction All-Stars will be shut down. After this date, arcade mode single player challenges shall remain playable for returning players. However, functionality and player experience may be impacted due to the server shutdown. Otherwise, all remaining game services will be taken offline. Any virtual currency currently owned by players can continue to be redeemed within available single-player modes until Wednesday, November 25th. All right, so there we have it. Destruction All-Stars shutting down. They say that from May 26th, Destruction All-Stars and all associated virtual currency will be removed from sale at PlayStation Store and will no longer be available for purchase. So by the time you're seeing this video, it's already gone. It's already been delisted. And so Destruction All-Stars, if you remember back when the PS5 was first being shown off, if this was revealed as like a, hey, you won't believe this one. And a lot of people looked at it and said, I don't know about this one, Sony. So right out of the, like right at the time of reveal, everyone was kind of down on it, and sort of with good reason, because the whole time I was playing the game, it felt like you should have a rocket launcher or machine guns, something else on the car. And I think many people would have rather had Twisted Metal, and that was a game that was in development that Sony canceled. So maybe Destruction All-Stars and the reception to it kind of convinced them to go that route and cancel Twisted Metal. I think if it was Twisted Metal from the start, it would have had a much better chance, but it did release February 2021, so it's been a bit more than 5 years since its initial release. It was developed by Lucid Games. They actually went on to be purchased by Lightspeed Studios, who's a Tencent subsidiary. That was in 2023. And look, the writing was on the wall for this game when they had a hard time just filling player lobbies and rooms, and we heard that, oh yeah, they had a bunch of bots that they had to set up into the game so that people could just start matches. And so there's probably like a dozen or so people who are like, oh, Destruction All-Stars is going away. Clearly, this just shows the struggles that Sony has had with the whole live service initiative that they started. And Destruction All-Stars was right there front and center. And they tried to launch it, what was it, like $70 at first. Then it went down to $20. They put it in PlayStation Plus, and it still struggled this much. So while Sony has had some success stories, clearly with something like Helldivers 2, Gran Turismo, that is a live service game, and it's continued to be successful. I mean, really since the PS1, Gran Turismo has always done well. But for some of these other kind of weird or random games, hasn't necessarily worked out for Sony, and those are for only the ones that have even released. Many of them were just flat out canceled in development. So I know we're leading up to Sony State of Play next week, and most likely we'll see Fair Games, which is now called Break-In, and it's like, all right, we'll see how that one goes. But there you go, Destruction All-Stars shut down now, delisted. It's still delisted, and you're going to see it get shut down over time as we head through the rest of the year. Next up, let's talk about multiple games that seem to be leaking out through, once again, ratings boards. One caught a lot of people off guard because it's kind of an interesting collaboration that when I was first looking at it, I said, that's weird. Oh wait, that actually makes sense. And you can see over on Komatsu, Lego Skylines. Okay, this is by Paradox Interactive, and it was, again, part of the ratings board, and we see this happen a lot leading into big events like we're seeing next week, where you'll just have a bunch of things get rated, getting prepped, of course, for its reveal, and then set up for it to launch probably in the next few months. So Lego Skylines being like a city sim builder, and then you bring in Legos, yeah, it makes sense to me. Now, I'm curious how exactly that's going to be, I guess, differentiate itself from just regular city skylines, but maybe they'll just kind of play into it with a lot of the Lego stuff. It'll be maybe a bit more casual. I'm interested on that only because I want to see how exactly it's going to work out with kind of the Lego theming, but it does make a ton of sense. You build stuff with Legos, you build stuff in city skylines, so bring them together. Sure, that's probably going to do very, very well. Okay, so along with this, Persona fans, Persona 4 Revival was also rated, Sega and Atlas, of course, and I assume this is going to be part of that Xbox showcase, as Microsoft and Sega have been pretty close with a lot of their presentations and big reveals, especially things coming out of Atlas. Like, we see that quite often there. So it wouldn't shock me if maybe during that Xbox showcase, you see Persona 4 Revival pop up, and people have just been very curious as to what's going on here with it. And maybe we will see it, I guess, come out later on this year. There's also been some rumors going around, kind of unsubstantiated there, but about Persona 6 and how that's aiming for 2027 right now. That Persona 5, by the way, was a PlayStation 3 game. So they could still also show off Persona 6 after, say, Persona 4 Revival, just like, hey, look, we're also working on the next big Persona game, don't worry. And we also see ratings for Gears of War EDE. That should be a pretty big showing here during that Xbox showcase, of course. Ace Combat 8, Wings of Thieves, we're expecting that to come out later on this year. And then Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, super random thing to pop up because it would be a Switch 2 edition of the game. Great game, it just kind of got overlooked, and that was sort of it for the studio behind it at that point. So I'd like to see if maybe there'd be just some renewed interest for Guardians of the Galaxy when it comes to the Switch 2. And then I'm sure people would be curious about like the technical aspect on Nintendo's new hybrid system. But we're going to see more and more stuff, I'm sure, leading into next week, especially, I would say, approaching and then over the weekend, just ahead of should be a ton of game reveals with 3 big events lined up in the course of like 7 days for next week. So exciting stuff, and pretty cool at least to see some of these games start to show up in these ratings board, even if it's like some very random stuff like Lego Skylines. Next up, let's talk about 007 First Light. It was out in early access yesterday, but it's officially out today on the 27th. IO Interactive did send over a review code for me to check out. That was at the end of last week, so I had a good bit of the weekend and then a little bit to start off this week to go through the game. I did a video just going over my initial thoughts on the game after my playthrough on it, but I also wanted to take a look at how things went on the Metacritic side with all the critic reviews that came in, and we can see this currently sitting at an 87. Now it's on the PS5 where the majority of reviews came through. Then we have the PC, which is 87, and then the Xbox that had 4 reviews at an 86. I don't know what the deal is, by the way, with a lot of the reviews that come up multi-platform. Man, the Xbox just legitimately has like no reviews most times. So I don't know if that's a Microsoft thing or a publisher thing for these games. Microsoft might want to figure that one out either way. But still, an 87 for 007 First Light, and this has started to spur on some talks around Game of the Year contender. And I mean, look, you see some of these publications giving it high marks, like VGC gave it just a perfect 10, saying 007 First Light might be the best James Bond game ever. Okay, I mean, again, big praise there, high praise there from VGC. Vice gave it a perfect 100, saying 007 First Light is easily the best James Bond game since GoldenEye, and is also one of the better Bond stories told in the last decade. You know, I did wonder about that with James Bond games, 007 games. It's not like we've had like a great run of them. For a while there, we had a lot of bad Bond games that were coming out. So it's not a high mark necessarily, or a high bar to clear, right, for what we've had at least somewhat recently. Taking a look at some of the reviews on the other end, PC Games gave it a 70, saying First Light is a solid adventure, though one shouldn't set one's expectations for the story too high. The double one there in the sentence. The blend of action and exploration works well, and 007 fans will delight in the abundance of tongue-in-cheek references to the films and novels. Okay, so again, I went through the game and I came away from it fairly positive. I think there are some things they can do to improve when it comes to player progression, say with the gadgets, or even just Bond himself as he's gaining experience going through the training regimen, or experiencing his first few missions and, you know, getting the hang of things, or figuring out different methods, say, to accomplish these tasks. I feel like there is something there left on the table when it comes to, I don't want to say a full-on experience system, because I don't think this is a game that should turn into an RPG, but I think there is more there when it comes to researching gadgets, building them out, just making your character feel like they're getting stronger as they go through the game itself. And maybe that's something that IO explores for the next one, because yes, I do believe they will have more Bond games in the future. For this one though, it's a good time, especially if you like 007 James Bond. you may as well just go pick it up because you're going to have a blast going through what ends up being about a 13 to 15 hour campaign. And it's probably like 3 or 4 Bond movies kind of just mushed together and with a ton of action and, yes, some Hitman thrown in there if you like kind of figuring out different puzzles or ways around certain issues or problems in the game without necessarily just brute forcing your way and running and gunning. There are some legitimately clever things in the game in order to do a pacifist run or just a ghost run where they never see you. So if you like Hitman, if you like Uncharted, it's kind of both of those games thrown together with 007 and James Bond. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation Plus essential games for the month of June. Now, Sony did also let us know that the Destiny 2, they're going to have an edition for that with extra and premium that will include Final Shape. So great news, Destiny 2's ending. Here's Final Shape, which, okay, sure, I guess they already have like there's already there's so many like bundles and SKUs for Destiny at this point, it's hard to keep track. And then they also take stuff out of rotation. Who knows? But Final Shape, hey, look towards that in June if you've wanted to experience it in Destiny 2 as the game gets sunset. But for Essential, we can see over on PlayStation Blog, these will be live June 2nd, and it's certainly something. So we have Grounded Fully Yoked Edition. That's on PS5 and PS4. Look, I know people do get a kick out of Grounded. They like Grounded, sure. I don't know if that's a headliner for PlayStation Plus Essential, but that's just me, okay? Then we have Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 on the PS5 and the PS4. All right, and then we have Warhammer 40,000 Darktide on the PS5. Oh, but good news, EA Sports FC 26. That will stay in as part of the PlayStation Plus program here, running until June 16th. So if you want to go ahead and add that to your library because you're signing up in June so you can play Grounded Fully Yoked Edition, you're able to do so. They just raised the prices of the thing. I know it's not for current subscribers, but still, just the overall idea is there that they're looking at this going, well, the service is worth more. Here's why. Wait till you see June, and then it's Grounded and Nickelodeon All-Stars. You seem like you have something lined up here to go along with that price increase, and they just don't. So that's kind of the perception. The optics aren't necessarily great. But hey, if you wanted to play Grounded, you'll be able to claim it here starting on June 2nd, so look forward to that one. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you played Destruction All-Stars before? Okay, 88% say no, 12% say yes. Look at that, literally dozens. Okay, there you go, 12%. I mean, a lot of the comments are like, you probably should have asked people if they know what Destruction All-Stars even is. And I thought about it, okay, almost 5.5 years. It is crazy to think back that far for that reveal, and it got pushed back immediately anyway because the game, everyone was kind of trying to figure out who it was for, like what's the aesthetics of it seemed off. It looked like a Ubisoft game, and then Sony said, you know what, you're right. Here's fair games. So not a great start necessarily for the generation of live service games from Sony, and it's not going out on a bang, it's pretty much going out on a whimper. And we'll finish up the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Dodo, who says, we don't need to make loading screens fun, we need to get rid of them. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we've been kind of working through that for the most part this generation. We still have loading screens fairly consistently, I'd say, but it's much less than we did just last generation. And then I have a feeling next generation with the PS6 and Xbox Helix, the SSDs will only get even faster. So I'd like to think that patent won't even necessarily have a chance to be used that often if Sony does use it. Remember, patents are usually ideas, and they just want to lock down some of those more fine details for their ideas. But remember, we are hearing more and more about local compute going away. I know it sounds crazy because we kind of see the state of cloud right now, and it's nowhere near what you can get out of native, especially when it comes to responsiveness. But 20 years in the future, who knows? Maybe they're thinking about the queue time to use like the cloud, and they go, oh, well, we can show them an ad, or we can do things to keep them busy rather than look at their phone while we're waiting to find a usable server so that they can log in and play the next God of War that'll probably still be around in 20 years. That's kind of where my mind was going, but yeah, absolutely. If load screens are still a thing with the PlayStation 6 and the Xbox Helix to at least enough of a degree where you have to sit there for 30 seconds, they'll probably figure out ways to feed you ads or show you different things that you can buy with your PlayStation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here on a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about my thoughts on 007 First Light, I'll leave that video right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.